Everybody, and welcome back to NorCal Slotcar Scene and our interview with Ian Douglas and Todd Ulery, talking about last weekend's epic race at Electric Dreams. In part two, we're going to talk about qualifying, the heat races, and the race itself, the A main, leading up to the epic finish. Qualifying now. And I don't know who the odds were on, but it looked like it was maybe 50-50 who would TQ. And as I recall, Todd turned the fastest lap in qualifying, but Ian was on the pole because there were 3 rounds of qualifying, just like Formula One. So if you made it through to round 3, your fastest lap in round 3 was on the pole.
That is correct.
So where are you thinking? Are you looking for the pole? Because the pole at this race just sorts you into the heat. It doesn't. It means something, obviously, but it doesn't really mean anything in winning the race. If you're in the top 6, you're still in that last fast heat. So did you put any effort into qualifying, or any effort more than you normally would?
Todd, you go first. Take that.
That's a crazy question. Sorry, but
that's a crazy question.
I think we go into it we want to win pole. I mean, there's a trophy for pole. If there's a trophy for it,
I didn't mean it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything into the overall race.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think in general, as long as we are in the A main, we're not, as far as the race goes, we're not really worried about anything. Once you get into that top 6 and the way Marco has the format now, it's really just, you're going for that pole trophy. You're kind of going for bragging rights at that point.
Yeah.
And you built the car to go fast. You may as well take that time and set the fastest lap you can, because you're probably not going to be able to do that in the race unless you're Ian.
Had you run that fast in practice? Both cars were running in the 5.3s in qualifying. Had you run 5.3s or faster in qualifying in practice?
I had run a 5.39 in practice, but admittedly, I didn't have a ton of prep time on this one, where normally I would get to the track pretty frequently. So it's unusual for me to run a faster time in qualifying than I had in practice, although it has happened a few times. But
blitzed it in the second round for sure.
Yeah. And way quicker than I thought too, which then made me chase it.
Made it exciting.
Way quicker than Ian thought, or is that? What about you? What did you run in practice? Did you run any 5.3s or 5.2s maybe?
So Friday evening, I ran a 5.388 on yellow. And I was like, putting the car away now. I was very impressed with that, because I hadn't run a 5.3 the entire week. I hadn't run it Thursday or Friday up to that point. So I was really feeling good about that. And yeah, of course, qualifying matters. I mean, I think qualifying, it doesn't, like, logistically, you can win from any of the top 6 qualifying positions, obviously, or really even up to 12th. You can still win because you're still in the semi. Or no, I mean, I guess you could win from any of them. But anyways, but yeah, of course, you want to get pole. You want to get that little trophy. You want to, have the bragging rights. And I think that psychologically, it helps not necessarily like say something to the other people, but it helps build up your confidence in yourself and your car for the main.
Okay, I got to ask one more question. I saw it. So did you run 2 laps and pull it off like you did last year?
I didn't do that at Scaleauto last year, so I don't know what you're talking about.
At the Slotted Nationals last year. Couple laps,
no, of course.
pulled it off. You don't remember that?
I learned my lesson with that. I'm not going to do that again.
Okay.
He couldn't either, because I was after him in every round.
Yep.
Oh, that's true. Yep. Yeah. So, okay. So qualifying is over. I'm going to kind of bypass the heats. I'll just add, were the heats kind of easy? You just kind of run a good pace, but your cars are fast enough to make the top 12 without any problem.
Yeah, I think for me, the heats were, and I know I said this to Ian during the race, the heats were almost harder to drive that car anything other than just all out. Just because, you wanted to take the turns easier. The car didn't go all the way through the turn. Then it was just that car wanted to be driven at full race pace, or kind of
So
probably half a
you're
second
getting
below
yourself
it.
in a
So
rhythm for the main.
yeah, I mean, it didn't really get me into the. I didn't feel like there was that much of a rhythm, and then we'll get into this. But then when we got in the main, I was actually surprised at how much of a rhythm I got into, or into the final. Um, yeah,
Okay, so now we're going into the mains, and Ian, you're top qualifier, and you pick white. And white is the lane I would choose. It's the second slowest lane on the track. So you're getting the slow lane, and you go to red next, which is the slowest. So you're getting theoretically the slow lanes out of the way first. My question is for Todd: if you would have TQ'd, would you have picked white?
yeah, I think so.
So the next question is, now you pick yellow. So did you purposely pick yellow so you would be totally on the opposite of Ian, and then come to the last heat, you'd be together?
Yeah, I like yellow as a counter to white. I think that it sets up really well because you're always every lane then has a specific kind of goal, right? So and I know it would be that way anyway, but it's just the symmetry I think works out really well where when you're on yellow and they're on white, you're trying to bank, you know, as many laps as you can. And same thing on black, really. Um, I think for most of us, black is relatively just like go all out. And then, you can really get all your fast laps in quickly. The other thing is then that at least halfway through the race and then at the end of the race, you're going to be right next to the person that you're racing. And I like that aspect of it, that you kind of separate it into different portions where the times when you're right next to each other, you're on center lanes. One of you is not in the gutter, and the other one's, right there. It's a very easy to go at the other person and race them from the center lanes.
So after the first heat, Ian's on white. Todd, you're on yellow. Todd, you've got almost a lap lead, not quite a full lap. Did you think it was enough, or Ian? Did you think that you'd quote won that first heat because you were within a lap of Todd?
For me, yes. So I knew that Todd being on yellow, me being on white, if I could stay within I mean, it's not like I'm sure there is a science, and I'm sure Todd knows it, but um it's not a science to me in the sense that I think if I can stay within one lap of the fast lanes on white and red, I'm doing a pretty good job. And I knew that when I didn't get past at all, I knew that I had an awesome white lane. And there was halfway through the heat, I could see him kind of, coming up on me. And I just, hit the afterburners. And I was like, I'm not letting him pass me in this lane. And so that was kind of my strategy, just to really hold white as long as I could, as well as I could.
Yeah, kind of hold serve, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
What were you thinking, Todd, after the first heat? Did you think you'd pulled out enough, or? Well, first of all, you drove a good yellow.
Yeah, I think, I do a kind of spreadsheet after the race, and when we went back to look at it, I know, Marco pulled me aside, illegal coaching aside, told me that I let the pace fall off and that I needed to pick it up. But when we went and looked after the race, it was actually that lane was the fastest lane of anyone the whole race. So I came out really hot, and I know that's Ian's strategy typically. And I really came out intentionally hard, and just to see how he would react to someone kind of taking his own strategy to him. And he didn't falter at all. I think he drove what was possibly, while it's not the most laps of the whole race in any lane, I think that was probably the best lane of any lane in the whole race, because that was like his second fastest lane of the entire thing on one of the slower lanes.
Yeah, that's pretty
yeah.
amazing. Because white is definitely slower. Black, if you don't know the track, black is the inside lane, red is the outside lane, and they progressively get slower, even though the first three, black, yellow, and blue, are not that much difference. But when you get out to white and red, They're definitely a little bit slower. And as long as I'm going to add a couple comments here, my take on that track is that what separates the fast guys from the slow guys is the delta from black to red is 3/10 with the fast guys and 6 or 7 with the slow guys.
Yeah. I think when
Yeah.
I looked at it, I really started doing some of this analysis at the beginning of last year. And I think that's what really got me to spend most of January and February in 2023 on white and red, just hammering those lanes and learning how to drive them. I think a lot of the guys that come in from 124, and Ian and Herman kind of fall into that bucket, I suppose, tend to drive red very well, like impossibly well. And I mean, I don't think that I've gotten it to that level. I know that's a strength of Ian's, but yeah, how you drive red, I think, and you know, I think black comes probably easier before red, but I think how you drive red compared to the other lanes really is the final like separator between the guys at the top and the guys maybe even in the bottom of the A main.
Yeah, I know Eddie Shore is great on red too. So that goes
Yep.
along with that. He races a lot of 24 scale and he's very experienced, which means he's old by age. But he drives red extremely well. So after white, you're a lap ahead. But now after the second, Ian goes to red and you go to black. After that heat, you got 5 laps on him. So what happened? I know you had some issues in red. So what happened in red, Ian?
So in red, I was driving very hard, as you do, and I got loose on somewhere. It was like the lead on or one of the fast sweepers. And once you get that one tire that picks up some dust, it's then just like a vacuum, and it just sucks all the dust onto that tire. And then over the course of like 3 or 4 laps, the car becomes undrivable. And I kind of remembered last year, at the race with Herman when we were racing Yvonne and Bernard, like I did that, but then I didn't pit, and I lost 10 laps over the enduro heat. And I just kind of in the moment, I was like, Frankie, I need a pit. And I had Frankie pull the car off and wipe it. I think I probably lost a lap. Frankie was super fast. I was really stoked about how fast he was. And just like a couple wipes on each, and I was back up to speed. But the couple laps, I think it was like I was running, 5.8s, 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 and then it was like 5.9, 6.0, 6.2, 6.4, 6.6. And then at that point I was like, I need to pit. So there was a lot of loss there. And then luckily later on in the race, Todd had a similar thing happen and he went in a different direction. For me, it was good. For him, it was bad.
Yeah, I watched that because I saw that. I thought something was wrong with the car. I didn't realize it was the tires. But yeah, your laps were in the 6, 5, 4s and 5s, and like almost 3/4 of a second a lap off the pace. And then when you got the tires clean, bang, it was back down to 5.7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you had, I think, two things right back to back because I think you had an off on the start finish straight where they didn't call track, and that cost you probably a whole lap. And then
There was that too. Yes.
and then
The
cleaning the
space bar didn't
tires
work.
pretty much right after that. You had the tire clean, which cost you a lap, and so very quickly, I think the lead kind of stretched out. And I'm
Yeah.
aware of these things going on during the race, so I know he's had some offs and he's had to have the tires clean. I mean, you hear these things going on, but you just keep pushing your pace and then oh.
It was pretty evident even after qualifying maybe that it was going to be between the two of you. So how close are you, Ian? Ian, how close are you watching what he's doing? And same for Todd. How close are you watching what Ian's doing?
For me, I mean, it depends on the time in the race, right? Like once I was down 5 laps, I kind of just turned inward and I wasn't really paying too much attention. And then once I started moving into the faster lanes, and I noticed the lead was not as much. I noticed I was like getting a lap here. Like I think I don't remember how many laps I got back on Todd when he was on red, but I think it was like another 2 or so, something like that. Once I was within 2 laps, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to start really focusing on what's going on everywhere. But for, I think, for green, I think you go green to yellow. For green and yellow, I wasn't as focused on him. It was more just like trying to run as clean of a race as possible, which I didn't do a very great job of, but I did enough.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So we're halfway through the race, and it's a 5-lap difference. I'm going to skip right to the last heat. So that's the qualifying, the heat races, and the race. In our last part, we'll talk about the absolutely mind-boggling finish and what the mindset was from both Todd and Ian going into that last heat. Thanks for watching. This is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car Scene.